gorgeous peeps, and welcome back to today's training session. I think it's training session number 7. Now this is all about the victim mentality. This session is, as a mindset coach, I spend many hours not only working with people but constantly researching, learning new ways. I'm an NLP practitioner, so I've done lots of other study to get into the minds of other people and help them find out why they're not achieving what they're achieving and help move on to the next stage in life, whatever you want to do. That's sort of what I do. We don't really look from the past, we look from the present day now and move forward. When I was researching this topic and even through my studies, this never occurred to me that I, at any stage of my life, suffered from the victim. I am not one to blame. I don't like blaming. And then through some research, I had one of those moments where I actually cried. I realised that certain parts of my life in more recent years, the last couple of years, that is how I had behaved. And so much of what I thought was I was blaming other people, but it was me being in the victim mentality. So it's very personal, this one, and I hope you get a lot out of it. You may not have ever been in the victim mentality. You may be in it right now and you don't even know it. It's understanding a lot of these concepts that we're going to go through and then maybe writing some stuff down for yourself. Then you can analyze your own stories and you will know whether you are. Doesn't mean that you are constantly, some people are constantly the victim. And some people just come in and out. And let me make it very clear. The story often behind what has happened can be true. I'm not denying the story. We don't discuss the story. You don't need to discuss the story. It's what happens, the way you react, and where you put yourself in the story. So not for one moment am I saying that the stories behind are not true. So let's get into the session. We'll go through a quick definition of what victim mentality is. It's a personality trait where a person tends to recognize themselves as a victim of the negative actions of others and to behave as if this were the case in the face of clear evidence of such circumstances. So it's when you are putting yourself, because of what someone else has done that you have absolutely no control over, you have put yourself in the victim mentality where what they have done is going to cause effect and it's proof of who you are. So a victim mentality is not, and I emphasize, is not a sign of weakness. Victim mentality is often very justified in the mind of the victim. There is a reason. And often people are saying, well, you just don't understand. It never happened to you. It's not that not understanding. It's what you do from this moment on with what has happened, your circumstance. When in the victim mentality mode, all the power that you have has been lost. So you have handed, being in the victim mentality, you have handed over your emotions 100% to someone else. And often the person that we hand them to, the perpetrator or the villain in the story, you would never hand them, you would never give them access, total access to your emotional state and your thoughts. You have just handed over your most powerful tool, your brain, to the perpetrator. That is what, when you are being in the victim mentality mode, that is what you have done. Blaming other people for how you feel. So when you're in the victim mentality, often that is what you do. You blame other people first for how you feel. Now, if you've done some of the previous training, we have gone through this where regardless of the experience that has happened, which is all factual, it's true, this is what has happened in life. There is no denying that. in the circle of the human experience, your thoughts, it's how you think about the situation, how you are reacting to the situation is what makes the difference. And from that thought, you gain a feeling from the thought process, and from there, you take action or no action, and the cycle then goes to whatever the results are. The results always prove the initial thought. So this is where the blaming often occurs. So I had this slide in the previous training session, but I really wanted to keep it in this training session because it is so relevant. So someone else is responsible. If your boss told you off in front of colleagues about how your performance at work, how would this experience make you feel? So would you feel insecure, irritated, hurt, embarrassed? You're handing all those emotions over to your boss. Is your boss responsible for your feelings? What has actually gone on in your mind to feel that way? When you start looking at it going, I am responsible for my emotions. If your partner forgot your anniversary, how would that make you feel? Would it make you feel depressed, worthless, resentful towards your partner? Is your partner responsible for making you feel that way? What's actually gone on in your mind to experience these emotions? So we went through this slide in the previous training, so I think that was training 6, but it's still very, very relevant because it often puts you into that victim mentality. Ways to spot if you are in the victim mentality mode. If you are feeling very defensive by a lot of what I'm talking about today, if you are saying things like, well, you know what, you wouldn't know, that has never happened to you, I'm allowed to feel this way, you are allowed to feel this way. Don't forget, the feelings that you're feeling are totally in your control, no one else's. If you find yourself complaining a lot, that when you're complaining, it wasn't my fault, I can't believe this happened to me, this always happens to me, I'm very unlucky, that person's very lucky, all those sort of things. The thoughts of poor me and self-pity seem to arise often. Only you know the answers to all these questions, and write them down if you have to. Keep note of all these little things and you can start to work out whether you are sitting in the victim mentality mode. When you are not taking responsibility for any of your feelings and hiding behind, so often when you're not taking any responsibility because the way you feel is someone else's fault. The way you feel obviously goes to the way you start acting, and because you're acting that way, well, it's not my fault that I'm acting that way, it is because of someone else. So you're not taking any responsibility for the way you are feeling. And often people do, so you're not taking responsibility or you start hiding. People, when they're in the victim mentality, hide away, avoid situations. They hide behind things like alcohol or smoking or comfort eating, those sort of things. If you are quick to attack someone who doesn't agree with your beliefs, your thoughts, your words, this is often a big way to recognize that maybe that's where you are sitting at the moment when you are very, very quick to attack. So that correlates very much with the defensive mode. How dare she say that? How? Natalie has absolutely no idea. She's full of shit. That's when you can start to assess. Only you know your story, only you know your situation, but maybe you can start to assess and then you can find out where it's all started and why you're feeling that way. So I'm going to go through an example here, and I'm going to use one of the slides that I used in a previous model, which goes through the human experience in detail. So we have the actual experience that, like I've said, is facts. This is what's happened. You have no control over it. It's either something that has physically happened to you, what someone's done, someone said. You can't control anything external of yourself. So that is the experience, and from the experience, you have a thought on that experience. You determine how you are going to see that experience. From the thought that you are having from that experience, an emotion will be created. Now that can be negative, positive, lots of different emotions, but that is generated, that is caused by what you are thinking. from the emotions you've had that'll influence exactly what you do or what you don't do. So, and then from what you do or don't do, you get the results. The results always prove the initial thought. So if you want to change those results, we need to hit the thought level, not the action level, because we can change our actions, but unless we're changing the way we're actually thinking about it, it's not going to work. So let's go through an example. I'm going to go through it in two different ways, and you'll see the difference. So this is an example of the experience of why am I always the last to be invited. So the reason I bring up this experience is this was one of my big moments recently when I was going through all this research is I was still am, in a friendship group. Got a few friendship groups that all become associated with different children and things like that. And I started to feel quite left out. Why am I always the last to be invited? Why am I always the last to know anything? And I was in the victim mentality. I did not know at the time. I did not know, and I got very defensive because I always thought I was a good person. I didn't deserve this stuff. So, but the actual thought then is I did not feel worthy at the time. I did not realize. So my meaning behind why am I always being last to be invited or being left out of these people. So in my thought on that was these women are just bitches and it's not me because I'm a good person. So basically that was my thought on the experience, which whether it was true or not, that is the way I interpreted the situation. I may not have actually physically been there for the situation and therefore I am last. I may have not listened, which happens often. I'm too busy chatting and I don't listen to stuff that goes on. I may have only taken in part of a conversation. That's irrelevant. That is the way I have interpreted the situation. So that thought has created these feelings inside. So I was feeling very jealous that they all seemed to be connecting and I just wasn't. Hurt, very insecure about who I was. So from this emotion that I had created from the thought I had on the situation, how did I behave? Well, I either didn't turn up to things because I thought, stuff you, or I would talk behind their backs to someone who was not associated with these people going, I cannot believe that they've done this to me again, or I cannot believe that this has happened. It was all poor me. I was the victim in my story every single time. The result, so what happened is over time I stopped getting asked. Because I was sort of turning into what I thought they were doing, but I was actually doing it myself. So the result, I stopped sort of getting asked or limited, and even when I was amongst these people, I felt completely outside. So that only just proved that my thought that these women are just bitches. The whole cycle that just proved it. And in my mind, I was doing fine. This is just before this is sort of on the verge of when I was about to have my little breakdown, and it just proved my thought that these women weren't very nice women, nothing to do with me. So now I want to go through this scenario when you are in a different state of mind and you think very, very, very differently about yourself. So when you believe you are worthy, let's do the exact same scenario, but you believe that you are worthy, you're a worthy person. So the same experience, why am I always the last to be invited? So the meaning behind it, the way that I interpret that now is my friends know that I hate organising things and I'm chilled with things that happen at the last minute. So very, very different meaning. If I'm the last to know, I may not have even been there. It may have been a conversation in the schoolyard when I wasn't there. It can be anything, but now that is how I would interpret that situation. So the emotion that comes from that is I feel very peaceful. I am very comfortable in my skin and I feel very secure. With the friends that I know are giving me what I need and I'm giving them, I feel very, very secure in my friendships. If I'm not there, it's okay. If I am there, it's okay. This is how I feel. My behaviour, because of the way I am feeling, is when you're with your friends, I'm always laughing, enjoying their company. Very, very different. I'm not avoiding situations. I'm not hiding away. I'm not getting negative. I'm not blaming anybody else. I'm enjoying the time that I do get to spend with friends and loving every minute of it. The result is I have much stronger friendships, and the quality of our experiences together are tenfold from what they used to be, because I was thinking about me. It was me, 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 me. Why me? Poor me. As opposed to the other way and changing what I am worthy. So if someone doesn't like me, that is so out of my control. It is so none of my business, because I can't control it. So I have to let that go. Can you see the two massive differences when, one, you feel something about yourself, and two, you feel a completely different way, and the way you interpret the exact same situation? So, victim mentality isn't a sign of weakness. Can I please emphasize that? It is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign that you are saying to yourself, oh, poor me. It is not a sign of weakness. It is often a very, very conditioned thought that can begin many, many years ago. I know when it came to my eating disorder in my teens, it was a conditioned thought that I was not good enough. I had a thought that I was meant to be something, and I wasn't in my mind. So my conditioning started from about the age of 7 or 8-ish. And by the time I was in my mid-teens, it was so embedded. It was so embedded that was my way. And I played the victim then. And I know that the friendship thing, I was unaware. So I would blame myself. I would put blame. I was being the victim and the perpetrator all at the same time. And other people. Someone did something by me that I didn't agree with, I would then punish myself with my eating and that sort of thing. So always a victim in their story. So nearly every story that happens in life, all those human experiences, somehow you become the victim in it. So it's not your fault, it's always someone else's. And this is, like I said, you don't have to be in the victim mentality all the time. It might just be one circumstance. But if you can learn from this to maybe assess that circumstance and go, wow, I'm looking at this in a very, very different light. Victims hand over all their power to the perpetrator. So when you hand over all your emotional power to someone else, they have total control. So when you are being the victim, when you are blaming someone else, when you are saying, poor me, you are handing over all your thoughts, which then are all your emotions, to someone else. And sometimes you are playing both the roles. So sometimes you are playing the victim and then blaming yourself and then playing the victim. And that is often where eating disorders come in. Because you are playing both those roles. You punish yourself for something that you are doing, because you are the victim, and then you're punishing. When you learn how to not respond defensively, aggressively, or simply avoiding situations, you are taking back control of your emotions. You actually keep the power. Now, I'm not saying if someone says something bad about you, you have every right to say, that's an interesting comment, or, well, I actually don't agree, and put it back to them, as opposed to they're saying, well, Natalie, you are just mean. And I go, what do you mean I'm mean? I'm so not mean. You get very defensive. Often when you get defensive, I'm going into the victim mode. When I'm going into the victim mode, somewhere along the line, I believe what they're saying. And I'm believing that maybe I am mean. I am mean, even though I thought I was a really nice person, or maybe I am mean. So I've handed over the power there. I need to keep the power. If any part of you believes that someone else is saying, what someone else is saying about you, you will automatically go into the victim mode. So if you believe anything that anybody's saying, you'll get defensive, you'll get aggressive, you'll maybe say something nasty back, you'll behave in a way that doesn't normally suit your behaviour. or you simply just avoid the whole situation. You go, well, that's it. They're out of my life. I'm cutting them out. But you are in control of those thoughts. So you must remember that. If you are believing that you are mean, you're in control of that. So if there's a belief there, you need to find out where that belief has come from. And it may be something that you need to rectify. It may be something that you need to forgive yourself. It may be something that you need to stop bloody beating yourself up about. It could be as simple as that. You never have to justify your own worth to someone else. Prove your own worth to anyone except yourself. You don't have to. If someone says you're mean, it's their opinion. It's their opinion. Are they someone that's important in your life? If they are, you need to find out why they've said it. That would be my thought. Find out why they're saying it, because it may be something that you have done that they're blaming you. They're going into the victim mode, blaming you for something that you did that you're unaware of. But you never have to justify your own worth, because once you find your worth, this is what we do. This is to find all your worth. Once you found it, you don't ever have to justify it. People can say whatever they want. You have no control over that. You don't have to justify your own worth, except to yourself, and that is to say that I am worthy. The day you admit that you are not perfect is the day you take back your own power. And what I mean by that is we all say, yeah, I know I'm not perfect. Yeah, I know I stuffed this up. Yeah, I know this. But deep down, we have our own little rule books for ourselves. And when people don't abide by the rule books, including ourselves, we start to judge and question ourselves. But when you start to realize that you are not perfect and you are not going to do everything perfect and you've got a lot of imperfections, is the day you take back control of all your emotions. If you are willing to be honest with yourself, you can find the cause of the victim mentality and make changes. This is where, going through this whole session, if you start writing stuff down, stories in your head, things that go on, you can start to find out where it all began and why it began, and then change those thought processes. Change the way you think differently about the experience that you've had. So just to sum the whole thing up, a big part of the victim mentality, sort of the opposite of it, is being vulnerable. So to be vulnerable, and I've done a lot of research from Brené Brown, who is a vulnerability guru. I just love her. There's traits to being vulnerable. So one is, it is one of the most courageous things to do, is to actually open yourself up to feeling everything. It takes great courage to do that, and it's not an easy thing to do, and there are times where you will shut down and times where you will open up. Feeling emotions, that is being vulnerable, where you are willing to feel the emotions, including the shit ones. So if you're in a relationship, for example, in order to feel love from your partner, or for you to love your partner openly, you have to be vulnerable, because you have no control of their love and what they are going to say or do. But you have to open yourself up to have that feeling, and that is a very, very vulnerable state. And if you're closed, you're not going to feel it and give it in the same way. You have to be open to imperfections, because everyone has them. You have them, I have them, our children, our partners, everyone has them. You have to be open to them, except that's what we all have. No one is perfect. And you have to know that you are enough. To be vulnerable, you have to know that you are enough, because that is admitting to the world, with all my imperfections, with all my craziness, with all my up and down moods, with all the things that I say or don't say, I am enough. I am enough. And that is a really hard statement to make, especially outward. So blame. Blame is often associated with something, that something must be wrong with me. So when we start blaming everybody else, when you're in that blaming mode, I'd like you to take note and start to work out what you are thinking is wrong with you, why you are blaming other people. Because often where we are judging and blaming is our greatest fear. Who am I blaming and why am I blaming it? These are questions to ask yourself. Am I willing to feel the emotions of the experience? Because often we try to numb them. And like I put in a slide before, we numb them with things like alcohol. You know, you've had a really shit day, that's it, I'm getting drunk. You've had a really your partner was just not nice. That's it. I am going to go into the cupboard and I'm just going to devour everything in the cupboard. So you are blaming other people, and are you not willing to feel the emotion? You want to numb those emotions. Listen. If you can sit and hear someone else's opinion. Now, opinion, we know what an opinion is. It's just the way someone else believes something is. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And you have no control over their opinion. Without getting defensive, without attacking back, and without hiding away, you will keep the power. Control. Victim mentality can be someone trying to take control of other people and only saying and making the other person only say what you need to hear. Otherwise, you need to actually feel intense emotions that you are afraid to feel. So what I mean by that is some victims go into the control mode in a relationship often, and they will, have that victim mentality, poor me. So in order to control the situation, you have to control the other person, and you'll only allow the other person to say the good stuff, because you don't want to hear the bad stuff, because that means I have to feel something and then I lose control, and that's just too scary. So, your thoughts, your choice. That sums up the session. It was a little bit of a long session. I'm a little bit exhausted after this session too. It brings up a lot of emotion in me. A lot of stuff I thought I had worked through until I'd done a bit more research and realised, there's other stories and other things that caused the way I was feeling. But it's also brought me to where I am today. Go through this again and write down stories when you are feeling in that mode, when you are instantly defensive, when you are instantly attacking back or being aggressive. It's hard at the time to take a breath and sit, but now that you've done this, take note, and then when you've calmed down and you've taken a breath, maybe write the story and think of what's happened and the experience and how it's affected you, and how did you hand over all your emotions to someone else. Good luck with this. This can be like an emotional roller coaster, this one, on how you react to it. And I will see you in the next training session. Okay.